All right, guys, welcome back. So today we're going to do some matchmaking, and we're going to talk about the fights to make after UFC Tampa. I'm I'm pretty. It's hard for me to just pick one person for each fighter. It's hard. I can see a lot of different options, and I don't always know who's injured, who's out for a while, who's doing what. So I gave you guys a few options, and I'll go over each and every one of them. And we'll start with the first winner of UFC Tampa, who is Piera Rodriguez. And I have a few names that make sense. I think Vanessa Demopoulos is a solid one. I don't think you're going to throw Piera to somebody ranked yet. I don't think she's done enough to do that. She had I believe, 2 losses or 1 loss, and then the disqualification against Carnelosi. So I don't think she's getting anyone ranked. So I think you can give her someone like Vanessa Demopoulos. That's a winnable fight for her. I think you can give her someone like Jacqueline Amorim. That's another fight where, it's a challenging fight because Pierre is a strong grappler. That's her main thing. But Amorim's a high-level jiu-jitsu practitioner, so it would be very dangerous. And it's a good test possibly for her. Other options, maybe Yasmin Yaregi, because Yaregi was a super hot prospect. Everybody loved her. She's a great striker. She's super chinny, and ground game isn't super tested. So you can give her that fight because if Piera wins, it's a solid name and it's a solid step up for her. And it's another chance for Yaregi to kind of get back into the picture. So if I'm a matchmaker, unless I'm super, super high on Piera, that's probably a fight that I would consider making out of the ones that I've listed so far. And then the other option is Julia Palastri. She's also coming off of a win. She just beat Corey McKenna, common opponent with Knudsen, and she's primarily a striker. She'll be the better striker in that matchup, but she's also a physical, strong woman and a grappler as well. Not a grappler, but she can grapple as well. So that would be a fun matchup, and that would probably be my second choice. But for my first choice, I think you make Piera versus Yaregi. I think that's a solid one, and the promotion wins either way. After that, Davy Grant was the winner, and honestly, I have a few ideas, but I think the best one, give him Cody Garbrandt. That would be fun. 2 vets, 2 guys who are on the older side of things, 2 guys who are primarily strikers, 2 guys with a ton of power, and 2 guys who just swing for the fences, throw with everything they have, and that would be a really fun fight. And a fight where Davy Grant can get a nice name on his resume because Cody Garbrandt, that chin is an issue, and you give him a guy like Davy Grant, who's a lot more durable, can take all those shots and can dish them as well. That's a winnable fight for him. And I think that's a good fight to make. Instead of giving him another young buck to test them out and maybe get a stepping stone off of Davy Grant, give him another fight against another vet. And then if they don't do Garbrandt, I think another good option is another vet in Pedro Munoz. I don't know if he's retired or not. That's why I kind of have him second on my list, but that's another fun fight. 2 veterans, 2 primarily strikers. Pedro's also very durable. And so you would probably get an all-out war on the feet with a lot of kicks coming from Pedro, a lot of hands coming from Davy, and that would be a really fun fight. I think either one of those makes sense. I think another one that makes sense is Douglas D'Andrade. That could be also a good fight. He's coming off of that loss to Miles Johns, so he's not the one coming off of a win. It wouldn't be 2 guys coming off of wins, but it would still be a fun fight, another war. And I think any of those 3 make sense, and they're all older guys, so you're not just throwing Davy Grant to the wolves. Then after that, who else we got? We have Miranda Maverick, who after that performance, even though she's ranked number 15, she's on a 4-fight win streak. I don't think she's anywhere near the top level of the division yet. I think throwing her to the top ranked girls will be a mistake. So I think you give her either somebody like Karine Lipsky, who she can beat on the mat, or you give her somebody like Karine Silva, who is a challenge, but somebody who she could probably beat through grappling if she can stay safe from the submissions. But there's a chance she would lose as well. So it's another spot where promotionally, I doubt that they are super invested in Maverick. If anything, I think they're more invested in Karine Silva. But either way, there you kind of win because either you get Karine Silva back on track over a solid win, or you get Miranda Maverick another win, get her on a 5-fight win streak, and it's a win that actually matters quite a bit because Karine Silva is a solid fighter in her own right. Then after that, we had Felipe Lima. You can do a lot with him, and it really depends on just what weight class he's going to go to because I don't know what he's doing right now. I don't know if this featherweight thing is just because he got 2 short notice replacements in a row, even though the Miles Johns one wasn't really short notice. But if you do bantamweight, I think a really fun fight could be Brady Heastand, where Felipe Lima would be the better striker, but he'd have to do a lot of counter grappling, really test that out. test out his takedown defense, his scrambling, which we already know is pretty good. But Brady's got really good control. He's very positionally sound. He's a really good wrestler with good jiu-jitsu in his own right. So I think that's a fun fight. I think Armfield's another fun fight. Two good strikers with solid counter grappling. You can give him Vince Morales if you're trying to build him up a little bit more. I know they re-signed Vince, but I don't really think that he's going to be a top guy. So I think that's a solid test for Felipe Lima. You can give him a Blackshear. Damon Blackshear could be a fun fight. Very, very good grappler, very physical, very strong. And we would get a lot of scrambling in that matchup. And both guys can strike. Felipe Lima's a little bit better, a little cleaner, but Blackshear is also a good striker. So that would be a fun fight. And another name that came up for me was Victor Henry. I think that's another solid option. Similar styles, good counter grapplers, high volume. So I think those are solid matchups. Out of all of them, I like the Brady Hiestand one the most. I just think it'll be the most fun fight out of all of them. But if he is at featherweight, which I really am not super happy about, you can give him like Bill Algeo, keep getting his feet wet in the division because he fought Naimov, who's a real 45er, but Miles Johns isn't. You can give him someone like David Onama. I think that could be fun, but I'd be kind of worried about Felipe there in that fight. I just think he's going to be too small for featherweight. So if you're making me matchmaker here, I'd probably give him Brady Hiestand, and then my second choice would be Armfield, I think. After that, we had Sean Woodson win. He's now on a 4-fight win streak. He's only lost in the UFC one time, and you could do a lot with him. I think at this point, you got to give him somebody up the rankings. If you're not going to, I think him versus Cub Swanson could be a lot of fun. Cub coming off of that win, Sean Woodson looking great, but I've been talking about it a bit, and I don't really want Cub to get another young buck. I want him to get another older guy he can fight, and Sean Woodson's a young buck, and even though that fight would be a lot of fun, I don't think it's the best one you can make. I think you could do Edson Barbosa. That could be a lot of fun. Barbosa is getting a little bit older, though, but it would be a good test for Woodson, test his chin, test his striking. You can give him Dan Ige. I think that would be a good fight, and that's the one that I'm kind of leaning towards. But then you can also give him – oh, I might sneeze. Excuse me. But you could also give him Giga Shikadze or Calvin Kattar. They're all strikers. I don't really see a point in giving him a grappler. Yeah, it would test him out, make sure he's ready. But his takedown defense is pretty good, and why not just have fun fights with him while you're building him up? So I think give him another striker. I think Calvin Kattar or Ige, those are kind of the ones I lean towards. Kattar's kind of getting towards the older side. I'd also say Giga, but Giga is super inactive. I don't know what he's up to. So out of all those options, I lean Ige, but I think Giga or Calvin are suitable replacements as well. Then we have Yoel Alvarez. So with him, I really hope he stays at lightweight. I know he's struggling with the weight cuts and all of that, but realistically, I think his best chance to getting to the title shot is at lightweight. I don't think he can beat any of the guys up there. I don't think he can beat Arman or Islam, but I do think you can make some really fun fights with him. The first one that comes to mind, it doesn't make a ton of sense with the rankings because he's number 15 and this guy's quite a bit higher, but him versus Charles Oliveira would be so sick. Two guys with extremely similar styles where they have no problem getting dropped or no problem getting taken down because their jiu-jitsu is elite. And they're both good, violent strikers, and their styles, even on the feet, are super similar. So that's a matchup that I think would be really fun. And I would lean Charles Oliveira just because out of the two of them, he's the one with offensive wrestling now. He looked great wrestling Chandler, who's a great defensive grappler. And yeah, I think that would be a sick fight, but it is a bit too much of a jump. I think what makes the most sense is Yoel Alvarez, Benoit Saint-Denis. Make that fight. Similar rankings. Benoit Saint-Denis, 2 losses now. He lost to Poirier. He lost to my guy, Renato Moicano. And I think it makes sense to give him somebody like BSD versus Alvarez. BSD, not the best striker in the world, but he's solid, hits pretty hard, could probably compete with Yoel on the feet. And then the grappling is where it would get really interesting because both guys have good jiu-jitsu. BSD, more of a guy who likes to play off from top, and Alvarez, somebody who likes to play off of his back. Could make for a lot of fun scrambles. So if I'm matchmaking, I'm weighing those two options, in my opinion. I would probably make BSD just because it makes more sense right now. But if things lined up, I wouldn't mind giving him Charles right now and just throwing him to the top of the division because I think that would be a sick fight. After that, we got Michael Johnson, 2-fight win streak now. You could do a few things with him. I think him versus Bobby Green could be fun. two older guys, two strikers. No one's going to grapple. Johnson might wrestle, but Green's got good takedown defense. And Green is, I believe he's off of a loss right now, but I think that would be a really fun fight. I think you could do Matt Frivola as well, or Jim Miller, all kind of older guys. Matt Frivola, not as much, but older guys who've taken a ton of damage, had a ton of UFC fights, prefer to strike. I think those could all be fun. But out of those three options, I'd probably pick Michael Johnson versus Bobby Green. I think that'll be a really cool matchup and a really fun one between two really good strikers. After that, we have Navajo Sterling. He's now 1-0 in the UFC, 6-0 overall, undefeated. You could do a few things with him. You got to build him really slow, though. And at light heavyweight, that's not too hard. There's a lot of lower level competition. I don't know if he's cut yet, but I would maybe do like Marcin Prachniow. I think that's a very easy fight for Sterling. I think he would run through him. So I think that's an option. You could give him an Ivan Ersland, the guy who lost to Ian Cutelaba last time out. I think that's another fight where Sterling should be able to win. I think you give him somebody who's not going to grapple him, Don Jung's an option, but he could grapple, and we don't really know where Sterling's takedown defense is yet. Might be a little bit too soon, but also a winnable fight. And then there's someone like Petrino. You can give him because Petrino is coming off of 2 losses. But if I'm a promoter, I don't think I'd be ready to just throw Petrino out like that. I would probably want to get Petrino back on track as well. And putting them against each other would kind of not really make a ton of sense because then you're losing one of them as a prospect, at least temporarily. So I think for Sterling, give him Ivan Ersland or Prachniow. If Prachniow is not cut, that would be my first choice to kind of get him another win. Or you can give him like a Cal Machado. That's another one of those. Then we have Daniel Marcos. He's now undefeated. He's 5-0 in the UFC. And I think there's a few matchups you can make with him. I heard talk about Jose Aldo, but I don't want to see that fight. I'd rather Aldo fight, higher guys, higher ranked guys who aren't young and up and coming. I think for Marcos, what makes most sense, I'd give him Jonathan Martinez or Chris Gutierrez. 2 kickers, 2 guys who are good strikers, 2 guys who won't really grapple. And if they do, they're not great at it. And 2 fights that are winnable for Marcos, but wouldn't be easy. And he's at the point where you can't really keep giving him super easy fights because he's now won 5 fights, technically 6, but we know what happened in the Richie Lang fight. So yeah, my first choice would probably be Jonathan Martinez. And then my second choice would be Chris Gutierrez for him. After that, Dustin Jacoby. So he's back in the win column now. And I guess you can do a few things with him. I would maybe do either Ryan Spann, or if you want to try to move him up the rankings a bit more faster, which I don't really see a reason to do so. It's not like Dustin's going to fight for the title. But I guess you can give him like Uzdemir, because Uzdemir now is coming off of that loss to Olberg. Could be a fun fight between 2 primarily strikers. Spann will likely try to grapple him and might gas out trying. So I think Uzdemir would be a harder fight. I think Spann would be an easier fight. I think either makes sense. If I'm a promoter, I would probably do Jacoby Spann, honestly, just to build him a little bit more, get him another win, and then do something like an Uzdemir. And then we have Manel Kape. He's now 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He's ranked number 6. And there's a few really fun things you can do with him. So the obvious one is give him the damn title shot, because Pantoja's cleared out the division. I've talked about this many, many times, and there aren't many opponents left for him. So it would make sense to give him Kape, who just won, just got a knockout, looked great finally. And he's been on the cusp of getting a title shot for a while now. He just keeps dropping the ball. But if Dana did say no to that, so if it's not Pantoja, I see 2 possibilities. You can make Kaya Sakura 3, because they did have the 2 fights in Risen. They each won 1. And a third fight would be sick. It would be purely striking. And they're 2 fun strikers, 2 explosive strikers. Kape's a little bit smaller, but maybe a little bit faster and a little bit cleaner. But that would be a really, really fun matchup. And then the other one, they've already got the beef. The buildup will be top notch. And you could probably throw them on a co-main in like Australia or something, or make them a main event in the Apex. But him versus Kai Kara France, that makes a ton of sense. That would be a sick fight, a lot of fun. Not even sure who would win. I'd lean Kape a little bit, but Kai Kara France is also super underrated and a really good fighter. My only thing with that one is I have a feeling that, Dana was pretty quick when he said no about the Pantoja thing, which makes me think that either Brandon Royval is getting the title shot, in which case Kape versus Kai Kara France makes sense, or they might be giving Kai Kara France the title shot, in which case You can give Mano Cop either Brandon Royval, which I'm not really crazy about, or you can give him Kai Asakura. I think that would be a sick fight. The only issue is that Asakura is so much lower in the rankings. He's at number 15 or 14. So I don't know if that's something Cop would be super interested in. I think he would probably prefer a Royval who's ranked towards the top. So as a promoter, if we're telling him no way, it's not Pantoja, I'd do Kai Kara France. If Kai Kara France isn't available, I would probably try to make Asakura 3 if he's interested. And if not, I would give him Brandon Royval. I think that makes sense. After that, we had Cub Swanson. He's now 3-2 in his last 5. And like I've been saying, I prefer they don't give them super young guys. I prefer they don't use guys like Cub to, as a stepping stone for their prospects. But I think you could make a few fun fights with him, right? So the first one is Nate Landwehr. Nate's coming off of that loss to Doo-Ho Choi, but he's historically a super durable guy, a guy who brings it every time. And that's exactly what Cub Swanson is. He's a guy who brings it every time. And I think that would be an absolute war, a win for the fans. And it's a fight that Swanson could win. I think other options are a Lucas Almeida, another primarily striker where they would probably go to war. I think one that would be a lot of fun would be Charles Jourdain. That could be a really fun matchup. Charles, I believe he won his last fight against Victor Henry. So both guys coming off of wins. I think that could be a really good fight. And the other option that I could think of is the Doo-Ho Choi rematch, because Doo-Ho Choi is now looking amazing. They fought years and years ago. Give Doo-Ho Choi another shot. But personally, I'd leave Doo-Ho Choi for someone else, build him up, and then I would do Cub versus Nate, make it a fight for the fans. I think that would be a war, and it would be a lot of fun. And then my second option would be Charles Jourdain. After that, so I've only been doing winners, but I'll talk about Colby because it's Colby Covington. He was a top-ranked guy for a long time. My top option for him is to retire. I rather we don't get worse and worse images of him. I rather he just stops at this point because he's probably out of the title picture for good. But if not, I think someone who can make some sense is Vicente Luque, who just got his own win against Themba, who's also on the older side, who's not taking punches as well anymore. And he's a guy who can counteract Colby's grappling with his jiu-jitsu, with that Darce that he loves so much, and a guy who could probably outstrike Colby, but would give Colby opportunities to also win. So I think if you're matchmaking for Colby, you either give him something like Luque, because I don't think he's going to take much further of a step down. Colby could probably clear out everybody under 15 or, under like the top 20 guys, but is he going to do that? I highly doubt it. So I think either retire or someone like Luque is good. And then last but not least, Buckley won the main event. I did a video on this already, so I'm going to be super short on this one. But I think the most likely option, the one that makes the most sense, is Ian Gary. And then the one that I want to see the most would be Jack Della Maddalena versus Buckley. But I think they likely make Ian Gary. And that's it, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.